guys, and welcome back to another video. In today's video I'm going to be talking about my 2 least favorites and my 3 favorites of the month. I thought this would be a fun way to kind of summarize what I read in the month without talking about all the books, since I did do a week 1 and 2 update in one video and a week 3 update in another video, talking about all of these books, talking about all the books that I read during the separate weeks in a little bit more detail. So if you want to go watch those videos before you watch my favorites, those will be down in the description below. But with that being said, let's just get into the video. So I think this one comes as a surprise to no one, but my least favorite book, one of my least favorite books, might be a little harsh to say. I did still enjoy it, but that was mostly because of the narrator. But Ready Player 2 was one of my least favorite books of the month, simply because I found it really chaotic and really messy. And I also found it kind of like a teenage situation where there's problems created that really didn't need to happen. But the good thing that I did take out of this book, along ignoring my annoyance, I really enjoyed the fact that there was a couple characters that kind of learned their lesson with a couple things, and there was also more fun 80s, well, anywhere between, like, I think it was mostly the 80s, but there was a couple other genre time periods thrown in here, so it was really fun to see how many of those I knew. On the note of things I didn't like about this book, besides the chaotic messiness, I also felt like the plot jumped too much. I feel like we went from one situation to another way too quickly, and it wasn't cleanly done. It was done in a sense that you were kind of just bouncing all over the place. There was a character introduced and her plot line that made no sense and seemed almost unnecessary at some points, and we've seen once or twice from that character, and that was it. So it was very confusing as to why a new character was added that was not needed. Well, I still gave it a 3 stars. It just didn't catch my interest, but I am glad I read it, as my mom did get me it for my birthday, and I will probably just keep a hold of this one because the cover in this spine is really pretty, and eventually I'll own Ready Player 1 again, so it'll just be nice to have the set. One of my other least favorite books of the month was Umbrella Academy Volume 2, which this is not going to probably focus. But it was one of my least favorite books of the month, again because of the chaotic messiness that it was. I really things I enjoyed about Umbrella Academy Volume 2, though, is that I handled the assassination of the president really respectfully, and it was also fun to follow these characters around. However, with Umbrella Academy Volume 2, it was a little annoying because I felt like we were trying to follow too many characters, doing too many things at once. There was also a point where one of our characters came out healed and wasn't explained how. Like, she was went in the hospital and came out and she was fine. We were in a different time, so that shouldn't have been possible. And I don't know how to explain that, how it shouldn't have been possible without spoiling the book, but I just felt like there was way too many things that were happening all at once. There was too many things that weren't explained that should have been explained, and I also feel like we kind of abandoned a character that at least someone should have been watching. There was another character who, there was kind of 2 of him, but it wasn't explained very well how. Maybe it just went over my head and I need to reread the novel, but it just felt like there was a lot of things that were either unexplained or things that were explained before. It felt like there was a lot of things that could have been left out. I mean, maybe they were added in for the sense of adventure, I'm not sure. But either way, it was one of my least favorite novels of the month, but I did really enjoy the rest of the series, including the spin-off, so that's the good thing. Moving on from there, let's just talk about my 5 favorite books, where I have a lot more to talk about because, of course, they're my favorites, so there's more to say. With that being said, my first love of the month, my number 1 favorite book of the month, probably of the year, 2, is Ruin and Rising by Leigh Bardugo, which is the third book in the Grish trilogy, starting with Shadow and Bone, Siege and Storm, and then of course Ruin and Rising. Ruin and Rising would also be my favorite in the series, but I'm going to hold off on saying that until I reread the entire trilogy altogether instead of a couple of years and a few months apart. So, things I enjoyed about Ruin and Rising. 1. The adventure part was handled really well. Even though I was listening to the audiobook and not reading it physically, I feel like I was able to keep track of where the characters were and what was going on very well. And I really didn't get confused, and if I did get confused, there was still some context clues that were left behind that was kind of like, oh yeah, we're here and we're dealing with this thing. And I really enjoyed that. Leigh Bardugo seems to be pretty good about that, about leaving context clues, so that way if you pick up the book again at any point, you kind of can figure out what's going on. I enjoyed the level of tension in this novel. That being said, I still hate the Darkling. Hate is a very strong word, but it's true. Well, I do highly recommend that you look at trigger warnings. Some of the ones that I do remember is there was very much a sense of abuse. There was a lot of manipulation. I can't say that. But there was a lot of just mind fuckery that was going on. There was also a lot of adjusting and coping in this novel, as in the sense of a couple of our characters now have PTSD. One, because rape was briefly mentioned in the most gruesomest way. We also had a character who had their arm amputated, or a leg or something. So I laugh because it makes me uncomfortable. I'm that person. Anyways, so just a couple things to keep you on that note. To go along with the trigger warnings, I will say that I feel like everything was handled very, very well. I feel like I have read a couple books for the evilness of the novel. There will be a character that just like shrugs off abuse or like shrugs off rape and like, haha, it's funny, and moves on, which just obviously makes me mad every time. However, in Ruin and Rising, I felt like those things were not laughed off or shrugged off in any way. The character actually had to deal with the fact that their family member had done that to another person and handled the conversation very, very well. So yeah, the novel being very adventurous and me being able to understand and follow it itself. Moving on to my second favorite of the month would be the Tea Dragon Society. Now, I don't have a whole lot to say about this one, but the reason the Tea Dragon Society was my favorite for the most part was the amount of representation that happened. There was disability. I had a character in a wheelchair. There was a gender fluid character and a gay couple, so LGBT rep on point. Definitely showed up. I want to say it's on point because I'm not either of those things, but it seems like the overall agreement around this novel, the reviews and stuff, I've seen a lot of good things about the representation. There was also a character that was hard of hearing and therefore used sign language, which was really fun to see because I never really see sign language in novels. So I was just really happy to see all of those things. And one of my favorite tropes, I guess, I think it counts as a trope. One of my favorite things is found family. I love when characters have family that isn't blood. It kind of reminds me of the Supernatural quote where family doesn't end in blood and it doesn't start there either. Those found family and that quote apply to my life, so I think that's why I enjoy it a lot. And the Tea Dragons were also just super, super cute on top of all of that. My third favorite series that I have so many things to say as far as spoiler discussions go, but I'll try not to leave any spoilers in this video, is the Throne of Glass series. So I read the first 3 books, Throne of Glass, Crown of Midnight, and Hair of Fire. This series, kind of like Ruin and Rising, surprised me because I didn't think I was going to be able to fit, let alone finish Terrifier this month, mostly because I was also reading Order of the Phoenix in the Harry Potter series. But I somehow did manage this, and I read it, and I did. So some things that I enjoyed about this novel. One, we have a strong female protagonist that can handle her own. Two, she is both feisty and closed off, but she is also fun, and when she's feisty and closed off on the inside, really sweet and nice when she lets you in on the inside. Sounds familiar. But one thing that I enjoyed about this, again, is there was a lot of trigger points, especially in the first book. In the first book, there was a slave. She was a slave. There was abuse. And there was also healing after starving, which I felt was handled, as someone who has healed after being starved, I felt like that was handled really well, and stopping things, and it was just handled really well. I also felt like in book 2, grief was handled really well, but trigger points and topics and memories aside, one thing that I enjoyed about the plot is that every time I thought I understood what was going on, I didn't, and I enjoyed that this book, at least these first 3 novels, pause for an itch break, at least the first 3 novels had a cliffhanger at the end of the chapter. That's something that had me not wanting to put it down, was because I would get to the end of the chapter and it would either switch characters, so that way I would have to wait 2 chapters to find out what was going on, or we kind of left that subject open until a later point in time. So I did fly through all of these novels pretty quickly because the book just was on a never-ending cliffhanger. And I remember with Crown of Midnight, which is book 2, it kind of left off on a sweet note, like I am, on a sweet note, kind of sound like it could have been finished, but not really. It was an open-ending finish point. It was an open-ended ending, if that makes any sense. That made me want to pick up book 3. In book 3, I've kind of been waiting to start the 4th book because it is on my September. Many good things about the series, spoiler and non-spoiler, but I'm trying to be non-spoilery, so yes. I also love the kind of love angle we got going on. Let's talk about my 4th favorite book of the month, and that is the Umbrella Academy spin-off, You Look Like Death, which I can't tell if it's going to be part of the series or not. A quick summary of what this is about the character Klaus, which is number 4, I think, book number 4 or 5 as far as number of children's. Klaus has been through a lot, so trigger points for You Look Like Death if you're going to read the Umbrella Academy spin-off: abuse, drug abuse, alcoholism, grief, manipulation again. What I loved about this novel, this graphic novel, is there was a really well handled conversation around all of those triggers in such like 250 pages. It was handled really well. I understood what was going on, but we were also on a fun adventure the whole time. And one thing that I really enjoyed about this too was there was a point where the character the villain who was like tricking everyone's mind was also getting tricked, and I really enjoyed that. I also loved that they made a whole scene. There was like some ghosts that were trying to move on, and they were able to move on in the most funny way possible, and I loved that part of this book. Moving on to book number 5. So the last book of this video was Crimes of Grindelwald, Maker's Mystery and Magic. That I really loved because it was it was a interview by the cast for the cast and everybody else. What I really enjoyed about this, as someone who's read a lot of behind the scenes things for Fantastic Beasts mostly, but a little bit of Harry Potter, was that we got to learn about things that I never hear about. So when I notice in awards shows, even though I don't watch them, what I usually hear is like, oh, we get to hear about the cast and the director and sometimes the music guy, and sometimes we get to hear some set stuff, but usually not, unless you're going to go pick up a book or a magazine. What I really enjoyed about Mysteries and Magic and Crimes of Grindelwald was we got to hear a lot about the little guys. So we got to hear a lot about the people that go get food for the cast and like their midnight runs to the store. Story was told at one point, and we also got to hear about how the actors got to pick their costume to kind of go with their character. It was also fun about hearing about the wand training, how they all decided they were going to have their character like, you know, point their wand and cast spells, which I didn't even know was a thing. It was also really fun to hear about the internship program. Okay, so this is useless information because I'm American and these movies are British, but it was still fun to hear about some of the internships and that brought these people to the cast or into the set one way or another. I thought that was fun to learn because I never really understood, and I still don't because that's just like one piece to a gigantic puzzle, but it was fun to kind of figure out how some of these people get onto sets, because I have always been interested in the behind the scenes things of movies and like being one of the small guys on the set, but I didn't understand how it all worked, so it was kind of fun learning about the British side. It was also really fun to see how many people that were on Harry Potter come back, and there was so many. There was so many that came back, and I thought that was really cool. That there was people that had been in the Wizarding World that came back to the Wizarding World, and it was also fun to hear about how some of the sets were built, and some of the music things too was also fun. Like how were they going to, if they were going to put a Hedwig song into a prequel. That was really interesting to hear because it was kind of like an omen to like the original person that put all the music in Harry Potter was the same person throughout. And it was also really fun. There was just so many things. It was also fun because it was kind of like a fun, just hanging out on set with the cast for like 3 hours and being with a group of friends. I did not mind in the least bit that sometimes there was interruptions. A cast member would be answering the questions and someone would intervene and be like, oh yeah, don't forget this thing. And it was really fun because that's something like me and my friends do all the time. So it was kind of like fun seeing these actors do it. It was also fun because Dan Folger, who plays Jacob Kowalski in Crimes of Grindelwald and Fantastic Beasts, the first one, it was really fun for him, for me to listen to him do the interview because he was such a goofball the entire time, as was most of the cast. It was fun hearing him put his input about his characters while also interviewing the set, and there was also a couple times where he made the golf cart into a carriage. It was just a good time. So I think that's why I really enjoyed it, even though there's not a whole lot of plot. It's more like it was nonfiction. This is my favorite kind of nonfiction to read/listen to is movie stuff. So yeah, with that being said, that is my top 5 favorite books of the month and my 2 least favorite books of the month. This video was way longer than I had planned it on being, but I hope you all still enjoyed this video, and if you stuck to the end, you're a real one. Thank you. And with that being said, don't forget to like, subscribe, and all that normal stuff. My social media is also in the description box down below. And yeah, I think that's all for me. I'll see you all in the next one very, very soon. Don't forget, you are important and you are needed, and I'll talk to you all later. Bye.